All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we're exploring a video. Can you live without a car? Public transport in Portugal explained. Sounds interesting. My first thought is no, you cannot live without a car in Portugal unless you're in one of the major cities. Let's see if I'm correct.
Hello everyone, this is Anna from Savvy Cat Realty, and today I'm here to talk to you about the public transportation in Portugal. About today's topic, public transportation in Portugal. So Portugal, like the European countries, does rely a lot on public transportation, and there are quite a few cities where you can easily live without any cars. And most of the cities, or all the cities, I would say, are perfectly walkable. You can literally walk from one side of the country to another. You just have to have stamina because the accesses are there. So the most standard public transportation is, of course, bus, and you will find buses in pretty much all locations, even.
All right, obviously, English is not her first language. She's doing a really good job. Uh, some of the things I think she's trying to say didn't quite make sense. But what she's trying to say is you can get by without a car. It's very walkable from one side of the city to another part of the city, and she has a reasonably good point. She said country, but I think she meant city. So let's see what she says.
Unlike the remote villages, they will generally have a bus that takes you to a main city. They are just less frequent the most remote the place is. So there are, of course, some places that don't even have bus, but those are really, really remote.
Okay, so Portugal has a really good bus system because it's a very hilly country. It makes having a train access everywhere, like other parts of Europe where it's a lot flatter, it makes it a lot harder. So they use the bus network to get through the hills a lot better, faster, and more efficient. And I can understand why. Now, the problem with it is obviously it only goes to that town. So you need to arrange further transport if you're going to get out. So it means if you're going to visit friends or family, they're going to have to pick you up from the bus station because a lot of those smaller towns, yes, they've got a small little town centre, but then they've got Portugal has a lot of villages around the towns that are the buses wouldn't go. So you've got to go further on. Now you might be able to get a taxi. So I haven't actually tried to get to a lot of the remote places by bus and then go and explore. I should actually do that one day to see how easy it is to get around. But yeah, once you get out into the more rural districts, you're going to need a car. And it's like anywhere. Like if you get in Australia, you're going to need a car.
Generally, you have at least a bus, but of course, these are limited, and sometimes you only have them between 2 and 4 times a day. So it's not exactly the most practical thing. And if you live in this kind of villages, I definitely recommend having your own car for freedom of transportation.
Plus, also, depending on the region too, the buses could take an awful long time to get to your specific destination because they might weave crisscross to multiple towns before they get to yours. So you might end up traveling 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours even just to get to a specific location. So yeah, if it's something that you don't mind doing and you want to experience life, you don't want the hassle of driving, have at it.
And the next thing would be the metro or subway. And I think both things are the same as far as I'm aware. And only two cities in Portugal have metro. So you have the Porto and you have Lisbon. Lisbon has an even better network when it comes to public accesses because it has, Porto also has some local trains, but Lisbon has a network of trains within the city. So,
So Porto has a relatively new network. I think it's only been open for about 20 years. It's a light rail network operating as a bit of a combination train and uh, tram style. And if you're from Adelaide, it's kind of like that combination, just slightly bigger. So they're not long trains, not like in New York with a massive subway or Sydney with multiple cars. It's basically just, you know, two, three carriages locked together, and that's it. So that's Porto's network. They're building it. It's constantly expanding. They're adding lines all the time. So I wouldn't be too worried about going to Porto thinking that you're not really going to have access to that metro. It's true that some of it is limited because of where, if depending on where you want to be, if you're on the outer skirts, they're not going to have the metro right there at that point of time. But give it another 10, 15 years, the metro will probably be expanding out that way. And Lisbon has a pretty good metro network. It's a proper train network, and yeah, and they also have light rail and buses and stuff as well. So
You have both metro and train, and since the city does spread out quite a bit more, or at least the urban area of Lisbon does spread out a little bit more, I would say that regarding living without a car, Lisbon is the easiest place to do that because
yeah, and I agree. And obviously, in the bigger cities, and even Braga can be included in that, you can get Uber, taxis, and a few of the other variations of those sort of services as well. And they're pretty cheap being in Portugal. So there are plenty of options if you.
you have the most options on public transportation, and it's actually easier to get around on public transportation than to get around in the car and look for parking.
Yes, in the tourist districts especially, avoid trying to drive. Let the seasoned locals do it. Let the Ubers, let the taxis, because they do have parking garages around. You've just got to really look. But even if you have a car and you want to drive from, another part of another town and you're driving into Porto or Lisbon, you can do park and ride. Just find the parking place right next to a train line, get in the train, go into the tourist centres, then you can come back out and head back out again.
Because that's a nightmare, and parking is very expensive. In Porto, it very much depends. It will depend on if you are going for the historic center, for example. I rarely.
Okay, so there's the Porto map. As you can see, it's quite limited, but I have caught the train in from the airport, which the airport is around here somewhere. I don't know. I can't remember where the airport is on this map. But there it is, airport. All right. So as you're going down, there are a lot of expansion through here. I've seen them building tunnels. There's more expansion going along the riverfront as well. So this is not the final map. There is consistent investment going along into this. So yeah, don't be frightened about moving to a place with no car in Porto.
Really take my car to the historic center when I'm in Porto because it's a pain to park and it costs a lot of money, and it's generally actually cheaper to pay for the Uber than it is to pay for.
Just another thing about driving, obviously, when you're going into places like historic centres of like Porto and Lisbon, those streets were not designed for cars, and so they're very tight. There, a lot of them are one way. You don't want to get stuck going in certain directions because you can get turned around, and without a sufficient GPS, you could end up getting lost. And if you're in a hurry, obviously you don't have that time to waste, and you run the risk of running into heavy, dense traffic. So park and ride is definitely my advice. Porto and Lisbon are brilliant at being able to provide the transport needed to get into those centres without needing a car.
For the parking. So I generally take either Uber or Metro when I go to the center of Porto. But Porto does not have such a big transport network. If you are not near
it's not the most walkable city because there's a lot of hills. So if you have issues with mobility, you want to spend money getting Uber, or get it using the network as much as possible. So you got to be careful when you're planning around that.
Metro station. There is the buses, and they do have quite spread out. I personally don't really like to use bus because they are very often late, and they stop everywhere. So and then they are also dependent on traffic, and so they very.
As I said, that's the key here is the traffic, and obviously if you're in that sort of area, running the risk into heavy traffic's just a nightmare, and especially around peak hour. You know what it's like in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, or anywhere in Australia in peak hour, except for in rural districts, of course. It gets busy, so you have to be aware.
You often take a very long time to your destination. I say metro is the easiest, and trains are the easiest ones to get around. And now going into trains, which is kind of the main topic here, because they spread out and give you a lot more options. So generally, trains are often the best way to travel between cities in Portugal. You also have the intercity buses.
All right, so Portugal has an interregional train network, kind of like how Victoria has its V-Rail. It's very similar to that.
That will be your only public transportation option when it comes to going to cities that do not have a train line. And I'm going to first mention the train options and the main train lines, and then basically you can go everywhere else on a bus. And these places you can also go by bus, but it's generally more comfortable to go by train. So the main train line in Portugal goes from Braga to Faro.
Okay, so that's kind of the big regional train networks. As you can see, you got Vigo. I live in Viana do Castelo there, and I can catch the train all the way down if I want to, down to Lisbon and further on to Faro, Algarve. And it's a pretty good network, but as you can see, is a lot of space in between these train lines. Now, Portugal is 600 kilometers long, so from here to here is 600 kilometers, and then it's about 250 kilometers in its widest points. So that means that there's still a fair bit of travel between here where there is no train, and these are very hilly areas as well. So you will be needing a bus or a car to access a lot of these places. Yeah, the train network's pretty good. It's just you've got to be aware where the holes in the network lie and what you will need to do to access those areas.
To go by intercity bus. There are two main companies in Portugal when it comes to intercity bus. You have Expressos that has usually standard prices that don't change whether you buy it a week ahead or.
Okay, yeah, so you can buy bus passes, the Ready Express and FlexiBus, I think it is. Hello again. Had to come back because there was a technical difficulty with the filming at the end of that video. So my apologies if you stuck around that long. Thank you very much. So just to recap what she was talking about at the time when the video ended, talking about ReadyBus and FlexiBus, Ready Express and FlexiBus. Now, they do bus passes and discount loyalty programs, and you get I think at one stage, if you go enough, you can get 60% off, and tickets really only start about $4 or $5 in non-peak times. Obviously, for more peak travel times, they're going to be more expensive. Demand and supply sort of thing. So, yeah, there's plenty of opportunities for you to get around Portugal without a car. All right, we're going to leave it there. If you like the video, please like it. Please subscribe to the channel. Helps get the message out there. Got to learn to speak. It's the next morning. I'm a bit tired. All right, have a great day.